It's that time again where we give thanks to our patrons. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 25 of Under the Middle Rope. I'm your host, Jose Taboada, and yes, 25 episodes in, we are just cruising. We are having a lot of fun. And of course, thanks again for supporting and watching along the way. It's that time again where we, like I said at the top of the show, honor our patrons. It's our Patron of the Month episode for September, where we ask our patrons to submit topics for us to discuss on the podcast. And today's Patron of the Month is Michael Keyes. Good old Michael Keyes, a man who was supposed to be on with us for the SummerSlam predictions, and unfortunately that couldn't happen. So we give thanks to him today, and we honor the good guy. And today's topic is best and worst factions in wrestling history. And of course, this can mean anything and everything. We mainly focused on the best factions because there's a lot of good stuff, a lot of good history with factions or stables or teams, wherever you want to call them. And we have a big laugh about the worst because there's one that stood out, and Pete leads the charge. And by the way, Pete Atkinson is our guest for today. It's just him and I discussing and having a good time on the show. So the only thing that I can say is just sit back, relax, and enjoy. Keep your friends close. Hey everybody, welcome to the discussion. Like I said in the introduction, good old Mr. Pete Atkinson is here with us. It's just us two today. Very calm, casual, cool, collective conversation. Because, you know, these conversations are fun. And I don't think Pete and I have done just me and him on a podcast, have we?
Nope, always been three of us.
It's always been three.
Me, you, Wolf. I think we've had me, you, RJ. I think we've had me, you, and Nick.
Or it's either just me and RJ or just me and Wolf. So this is history in the making. And for the 25th episode, very fitting that we have Pete here. Okay, so like I said,
the dream team.
Seriously, right? It's a nice change of pace. Like I said in the introduction, Michael Keyes, our Patron of the Month, suggested our best and worst factions of all time from any wrestling company. And you know, when you see the topic and then you go with it and then you look at history, there is a lot. There is a lot to process. Some of them obviously stand out more than others. And so what we're going to do is, in a very traditional top five in under the middle rope, we're going to go back and forth. I'm going to start off with my number 5. Pete's going to go with his number 5, and then so on and so forth until we hit number 1. And then at the end of all that, we're going to list some of our worst ones, or at least some examples of some worst ones. And I know Pete has one that I've never heard of in my life, so I'm very excited to see what this explanation is. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready, dude? All right, whatever. Away we go. I'm gonna start with my number 5. My number 5, Nation of Domination. Classic heel stable from the late 90s. Farouk, Ahmed Johnson, The Rock, D'Lo Brown, an entire rapping group, some very suited up guys. You know, my earliest memory of them was probably from the 1997 Royal Rumble when they're coming out in the Alamo Dome, and you have people rapping to the ring. They're very formal, a very progressive group. And I mean, given today's current state in the world, I can only imagine what the reception would be if we had a group like the Nation of Domination in today's WWE. But I put number 5 because it was a strong faction. You know, I'd say it's probably one of the more under the radar factions in the late 90s, because obviously, you know, probably a year later and you've had a couple more factions that came out strong, but this one was fairly significant, had a lot of good storylines, you know, Ahmed and Farouk, and then eventually, you know, Ahmed joined the Nation. Of course, it helped like build a foundation of The Rock, because, you know, The Rock was Rocky Maivia, eventually became The Rock, you know, with the Nation, and then obviously went on to have the career that he's had. So I personally like the Nation Domination. Great theme, great. I guess, you know, they had a good message.
A great theme, yeah. I'm not denying that one.
You know, looking back now, I mean, like it's a group that would I feel like it would hold up well. Again, given today's state, you know, this was a very progressive group. But I liked them for who they were. So that's my number 5.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you here, but with Nation of Domination, there's just a couple of points that are bringing me down on it. The first one being, I thought later on it was mostly about The Rock. And it was all about just building The Rock from this mid-tier to upper-tier guy than it was about the other members in there. Because none of the other members really went on to big things after Nation of Domination. They're all mid-card, undercard, following that. And the other was when it started. So this was before The Rock joined, before it became his faction. And it was just Farouk, and I can't remember who like the other manager guy was, and there was a few other members, and it was a little bit borderline, not racist, but on the edge.
Yeah, and like I said,
very on the edge in that initial 6 months to 12-month period, and that just brings it down a notch. But it was in my honourable mentions. Spoiler alert, it's not in my list, but it was in my honourable mentions as a potential one to be there. But so I've no issues with being number 5.
Yeah. Let's go to your number 5.
Yeah, so my number 5 from the same era is the Corporation, or later on becoming the Corporate Ministry, but mostly for the Corporation. So all your Vince McMahon, Gerald Briscoe, Pat Patterson, The Rock in there as well, Tess, Triple H, Kane, China, Big Show, Shane McMahon. I think Shawn Michaels was in there for a while. Ken Shamrock was in there. The Mean Street Posse were in there. I think Sergeant Slaughter was in there at the start of it. There was loads of them. But I think like peak Attitude Era WWE and peak Attitude WWE was Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Vince McMahon. And this was the iconic Vince McMahon, leader of the corporation, the biggest, in my opinion, heel faction that you can look back on as just a pure heel faction. Fed up of all like these rebels that go up against them. They're fed up of D-Generation X, fed up of Mankind, fed up of Austin, obviously. They went on for big things. At one point, they held all the belts in the company when The Rock was WWE champion. Big Bossman and Ken Shamrock, I think, were tag team.
Yep.
And Intercontinental Hardcore between them.
Yep.
And just without them, there isn't a Stone Cold Steve Austin. There isn't an Attitude Era. And there isn't potentially even a WWE around today. Like, that's how big, in my opinion, their impact was in that war.
It's interesting you say no WWE, because again, there was the Monday Night War, and everybody knows Stone Cold, like everybody credits Stone Cold to the man who essentially saved WWE for the most part. I'm not saying like people directly say it, but he's a huge 100%. Reason why they stay. But it's like, Superman has his like Lex Luthor, Batman has his Joker or his Riddler, and Stone Cold has Vince McMahon. Without that strong push, that authoritative push against Stone Cold, you don't give Austin the reason to say, he helped defeat WCW. Very good point.
I think this is also when The Rock really rose to prominence, was in this stable as well.
Absolutely.
He became champion, siding with Vince McMahon to become champion in that basically tournament that they held, where it looked like Big Boss Man was trying to get him eliminated all the way through, but he was actually secretly helping him all the way through the tournament, went on to win that title. Beautiful heel work there. And then that obviously leads to Rock versus Austin, those massive feuds between them. Rock goes on to be a massive face, and Rock goes on to like have all these things. And so without this stable, I don't think you get peak Stone Cold. I don't think you get peak The Rock. And they're probably the two most iconic legends in WWE history. So
yeah, you bring up if anything, as I look at your list, I kind of feel like this should be higher for you, because I know you have your reasonings for others, but that's a very good point. I
moved this one around a lot. This one started near the top, but
I've got my
other reasons for
I really like that, without corporations like WWE. I feel like people probably would argue it, but I think it's definitely a great point is to say why this is a top stable, a top faction, and rightfully so. I mean, obviously, then The Undertaker came later, then it just got really crazy. But
I was about to say that was maybe not quite as good when it became the corporate ministry. I think it was a little bit of a signaling the end of the corporation.
Obviously,
it became too big in a way.
Yeah, and I mean that's my honorable mention. The Ministry of Darkness. I was flirting with the Ministry of Darkness on and off, because Taker, the way they twisted Taker's character was very, very sadistic, very dark. But my goodness, was it intriguing? I mean, if it scared me as a 7-year-old kid, then something is working. I get scared easily, but something is working with the Ministry of Darkness. So, very good number 5. I'm gonna jump to my number 4, and we do have the same number 4 as actually. So I'm gonna put both of them up right now.
Maybe a surprise to some people that it's this low on the list, I reckon.
Yeah. So my number 4. is D Generation X, and Pete's number 4 again is D Generation X. Again, I know you like we just said Austin and Vince, how crucial that was, but let's not forget another piece of the Attitude Era, which is obviously D Generation X. And again, people love controversy. People love their like edgy stuff, and they still look for it today. And you when you talk about edgy, when you talk about controversial, you have to start with D Generation X. These guys were over the top. Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Chyna, X-Pac, The Road Dogg, Billy Gunn, etc., etc. They love to push the buttons. From Shawn Michaels suddenly loving to strip to Triple H, like just the crotch shots and everything. Very, very controversial. And even in their second run, I would say in 2006, they toned it down, but they still managed to be like that edgy group duo, HBK and Triple H. And again, it was a very strong group. Obviously, Shawn Michaels was a big leader, and Shawn Michaels took advantage of the controversy with the Montreal Screwjob. He ran with it. He somehow made it work. Someone was able to put it all together and just led a great charge. And I think it was definitely a good dominant group. And of course, I think when you have members like Chyna who are under the radar as well, that stood out. I think for me, it's another reason that helped define the Attitude Era and helped bring down WCW because of how entertaining they were, from their jokes to their actions, and of course, who could forget the Tank down to WCW and whatnot. So that's my reason for number 4. They were a crucial part of the Attitude Era, and if a group like that is helping define an era, I think that's where they should be mentioned in one of the best of all time.
Yeah, I do agree with every point you just made, but it's the reason this is ahead of the corporation for me is purely just because they're more of a group. They're more of an actual stable of wrestlers, in my opinion, rather than an authority figure in the corporation. But DX have had some amazing highlights. I thought the State of the Union speech I thought was amazing. Their actual parody of the Nation of Domination, that was beautifully done. And like I said, their parodies in general, they're Shawn and Triple H doing Shane McMahon, Vince McMahon is still one of my favorite segments in WWE. I still think that invasion angle, as much as it went over at the time, was really naff. When I look back at it, with the tank, with the actual invading WCW, it's not a tank. Can we stop calling it a tank? It's like a little Jeep.
Like a tank.
It's like a little Jeep thing.
But I mean, it had like a little barrel pointing out of it. I called it a tank. Maybe not officially, but
and also they got to the door, and that was kind of it. Like they kind of just like flirted around the edge of the arena. The reason I think this faction and the next faction we're going to talk about, for me, and maybe a little bit down on the list compared to where some people might have them at like 1 and 2, is actually their returns. So 2006 DX, as you mentioned, coming back, just wasn't as big a deal for me. And the next one I'll talk about, I think later on, it just died a bad, not as good death as it could have done. So, like, DX ended up having Hornswoggle in DX.
Yeah, so, who can forget that?
And I've got to kind of factor this into when I'm making this list. And having Hornswoggle in your faction is not going to have you that high up. And you'll see that 3MB are also not on my list because of that reason. And only because of that reason. So yeah, I love DX. They're the epitome of the Attitude Era WWE to core. HBK was my favorite wrestler for a long time. Him and Triple H are perfect together. And they obviously deserve to be on this list. No doubt about that. But I think, in my opinion, 4 is a fair placement.
I'm you know, the also the other reason why it's here on my number 4, because I'm happy that I got a rendition of DX, because I mean I became a fan in 2001, so obviously I missed all of that, and you know I knew they were a big group. I knew they were you know etched in WWE history, right? But obviously as a young fan, you know you want to live it yourself, and the fact that you know me as a young fan in 2006 got it. And they were still like just as like I said, exciting. You know, the big DX on the Titan Towers and in Stamford, and the plane, and with how they messed Jonathan Coachman and all that. You know, I'm happy that I was able to get like some rendition of DX. Maybe it was dumbed down, as people may say, but they were still just as good. And the tease at WrestleMania 22, when Triple H and Shawn Michaels both did a DX sign and to kind of tell everybody, hey, we may be coming back, and then the fact they did, it was all well done. So I think it's a good placement, number 4 for us. I'm gonna go to my number 3. This is one that Pete doesn't have. In fact, Pete didn't even want to put this on his on his top 5 list, which surprised me.
Honorable mention.
It's an honorable mention, but for me, it's big. Evolution, and I'm talking about not the women's evolution, which is important, but I'm talking about Triple H's evolution from 2003 to roughly 2005. Triple H, Batista, Randy Orton, Ric Flair. Oh man, to me, it was some of the best heel work growing up. It was a group you loved to hate. It was a group that you wanted to root against, and I think it's probably one of Triple H's best work as a heel. I don't want to say peak, because Triple H has had a lot of good heel patches in his career, from the Authority to DX to Hunter Hearst Helmsley in 96, 97. Triple H Evolution was just a dominant force. Obviously, you can argue that backstage politics, that he wanted to just keep having the World Heavyweight title, but it was a group that worked. It helped create and grow the careers of Batista, of Randy Orton, which of course they obviously went on to have great careers as well as champions. Randy Orton obviously still continuing, Batista already riding off into the sunset. Ric Flair, a man who has history with factions, and I'm going to get to that later on in the show, but Ric Flair just complemented it, and he's still like that nice little weasel of a heel, and it's had great. They all had great chemistry, and to think that it wasn't even going to be, who was it? Batista? It was Batista that wasn't supposed to be part of it. It's supposed to be Mark Jindrak, and obviously hindsight's 2020. Everybody could be like, well, what if Mark Jindrak was in it? But and obviously because you've seen it, you got used to it, and you're saying, oh, Batista was perfect. Jindrak could have been perfect, but it was what it was, and the fact that they all held gold at one point, Randy with the Intercontinental title, Batista and Flair with the tag titles. It was just a great, in my opinion, a great group, and the storylines that followed after as well, I think, were great. I know Triple H and Orton, somewhat got off a bit of a rough start, with Orton winning the world title at SummerSlam 2004, and then that small little feud after Orton was kicked out, but then Batista Triple H happened, and so it started out great. It had a great run, and then it produced more great stuff. So in terms of feuds and matches. So that's why I really like Evolution at 3 for me here, because it also defines my childhood. It was just so much fun to watch them. And again, once again, great theme. Oh, such a good theme. Oh, I'm a big fan of it. So that's my number 3.
Yeah. The reason Evolution's not on my list is, although they were an incredible faction, incredible star power out of it, they had obviously the previous star power Ric Flair, who I feel a bit harsh is not. I've got no Ric Flair stables on my list, which seems really harsh.
Yeah, I was gonna say, damn.
But they obviously had peak Triple H, and it made stars out of Orton and Batista, so I can't argue with that fact. But to me, it wasn't that fun to watch, and that's kind of my big issue with Evolution. I associate it with Triple H's reign of terror, and that era of Triple H where he just beat everybody.
Yeah.
And he just held those titles, and he won. And when you associate Triple H with his shovel, it's Evolution Triple H. It's that kind of era. It's just not, because of that, I just can't quite put it above the rest of these on this list. And
for sure. No, I get it. And I mean,
the turns were fantastic. The thumbs down from Batista, maybe the best face turn of all time. It's definitely up there.
Oh yeah.
And the feuds are a bit great. Batista became a star, and he was one of the best stars on SmackDown following it. Randy Orton obviously became the youngest ever world champion and became a star in his own right from it. And nothing ever went wrong with Randy Orton. We definitely didn't get any boring feuds, boring matches ever later on in his career. It was all perfect from then on out. Can carry that now.
It's funny you say that, because I know a lot of people were sick of Orton and Cena, in the early 2010s, late 2000s.
God, yes.
but come on, I mean, it's still a fun, entertaining feud, and if they were to go at it again, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I mean, bring it on. They're both great. They're both good at the mic. They're both good in the ring. They both have great chemistry together. I don't care if it's 85 million times. I have no issues with it. That's I know
chemistry though. Their matches weren't that great together.
I'd say so personally. I think they meshed very well. But again, that's my opinion. I know, again, what you're saying is definitely the more popular one, the more popular take to it. But Again, that's
Yeah,
just
the late 2000s though, I kind of like had like 4 people I used to really associate with Raw at that time, and it was John Cena, Randy Orton, Edge, and Shawn Michaels. I don't know why I forgot that name there. Like, and my issue was I was always rooting for Shawn Michaels and Edge because I just so much preferred them.
That's fair. I
to
mean,
John
yeah, they were. I
Cena
know they
and
were
Randy Orton.
oversaturated.
And because
They
I
were
preferred them so
oversaturated.
much to John Cena and Randy Orton, I remember like a main event of like some B pay-per-view, but I watched it because it's for free. And there's a fatal four-way match between those four, and I think John Cena won it. And I was just so pissed off afterwards because it wasn't Edge and it wasn't Shawn Michaels. And
I
young
think,
young me couldn't handle that because I'm not over 30 like Jose thinks. So I was actually young at that time.
yeah, I discovered that Pete is actually my age. I'm
Oh.
so sorry. I mean, and I mean, we do got to go on, but I just want to say, like, I mean, it's. I will say, like, in that era, if there's one person I wanted to see become champion again, like desperately, and I mean desperately, it was Shawn. It was Shawn. I knew Edge. I knew.
Shawn.
I knew Edge was gonna get more reigns later, and he did. But Shawn is a man who I adore. Literally, probably my number one of all time. Again, I say that because number one flirts around depending on the mood I'm in. But yeah, I agree with that. Anyways, let's go to your number 3 because it does differ from Evolution.
Well, I'll go to my number 3, but I think it's your number 2 as well. So you might want
It
to
is my number 2.
at the same time. It's the NWO, and I can't think of anything more iconic stable than the NWO.
Yeah.
And in that late 90s, they were the biggest thing in wrestling. 100% the biggest thing in wrestling. They were the biggest contributor to WCW in that Monday Night's War. They held the ratings for 84 weeks, I think it was, between 96 and 98.
Yep.
Nearly got rid of WWE, nearly beat them out. Like the arrival of Kevin Nash and Scott Hall in WCW after leaving WWE.
It's huge.
And the concept of them invading and trying to take over WCW is just something that hadn't been done. And then to bring Hulk Hogan in as the face, he was the face of wrestling, and to turn him heel is so beautiful.
It's
such
huge.
An incredible idea. That scene where there's like fans just lobbing things into the ring in utter disgust.
It's real to them, damn it. It's real to them, damn it.
His babyface gimmick had gone stale. But no one ever thought he'd turn heel. It was almost a John Cena thing. If he's never going to turn heel, it just can't happen. He won't become heel.
Yeah.
But he actually did. And just to join them is such a major shock, such a big thing. And for them to carry that as it's almost to separate themselves from the company. They're almost a separate promotion from the company. You had WCW and the NWO. So you had like almost this separate entity. They had almost their pay-per-views after them. It had a presence in New Japan as well. It was just so well done and it was so well created. And the only reason this is not number 1 on my list is because of what came afterwards. You had NWO 2000, NWO Wolfpack, all of these little side factions.
The LWO, the Latino World Order.
Yeah, it just so many little spin-off groups. Like when you look at the list of NWO members on Wikipedia, there's like 90 of them. There's so many members of NWO.
We could be part of the NWO.
Might be. For all I know, I was maybe a member of NWO Wolfpack. Why not?
I call the Latino World Order for me.
That's just the only thing that's dragging it down slightly for me.
That's fair.
Because it is peak Attitude Era. It's a peak Monday Night Wars. It's just beautiful faction creation and amazing how they carried it out. But then it just didn't keep going.
It fizzled, of course.
And that's what coming down. And obviously the WWE run was never the same.
Of course not. I mean, before I go on, like I said, like Pete said, my number 2 is NWO as well. And yeah, it's unfortunate that the NWO didn't, I guess, progress to what fans hoped for in WWE. Because I mean, let's face it, when you see them in WCW, obviously you're gonna want that intensity in WWE itself. And they came and they had that little moment at WrestleMania 18. And then eventually, it just was led by Nash, Michaels, Big Show, Booker. It was a mess, but it's number 2 for me because kind of like what you said about the corporation with Austin and the Attitude Era. Without, the corporation, WWF needed to respond, and they responded to what WCW did with the NWO. Because, without like WCW gave WWE a reason to fight, and that was the NWO. And even though Hogan babyface was stale, it's still the ultimate babyface. And I feel like I don't know if this is the right thing to say, but I feel like if you brought up John Cena, if that were to ever happen to Cena, we would still, I think you would get the same reaction, if not slightly bigger than what happened to Hogan in '96. It's hard, it's weird to say because I know
you would get half the fans cheering nowadays.
That's true.
If you turn Cena heel nowadays, half the fans would be cheering and the kids would be in tears. That's the reaction you would get today. You would not have got that utter venom hatred that just spewed out of that crowd on that night.
Well, to be fair, I mean, like, yeah, like you're right, because I mean, like technically, today's Hogan, Roman Reigns has turned heel, but like, I mean, like people were like jumping up and down on social media, so I get your point. Oh, I was happy, give me my wreck everything and leave shirt. I'm down, but
I'm trying to think of someone who could have that same reaction of like turning heel and like who would be the person like. The closest one in recent memory was actually Dean Ambrose when he turned on Rollins the night
when Roman announces leukemia.
Announced leukemia. That was pretty bad. Obviously, Ciampa turned on Gargano. That got a horrible heel reaction, boos everywhere, became despised. But unless the guy is so popular as a face, you're just not going to get that reaction. And even those do not even come close to comparison to what happened.
No. And I think that's why it's on my number 2, because it was executed to perfection. You just didn't see it coming. And yeah, I mean, to kind of like go hypocritical on my points a little bit, you're kind of right, because today's social media, fans want to see it. They want to see something different, which is why I think kayfabe is dead and why I want to ride that, because they just want to see something unfold. They don't care about faces and heels anymore. They don't care about logical storylines making sense to a certain degree. They just want just to see something different. They just want to, and then see how they run with it from there, which is why I say kayfabe is dead, because nobody wants to go do it to this. Not too many people, at least I don't, don't want heel versus face anymore. I just want to see if it's two good people, and if they can clash and if they can work, then do it. Don't put so much focus on like face versus like good guy versus bad guy.
It's not face versus heel for me. It's more of just a compelling storyline.
Exactly. And exactly. And that's and we're sidetracking. And again, and that's why I kind of just want to see it. Like, I feel like we're not going to get that today, right? Because fans just it shouldn't really matter anymore, because we're in such a different time. But back then, it was just executed so perfectly. It was so alive that it was just that your heart drops when you see what Hogan did. And again, like, it left such a lasting legacy. It's like, it's one of those like, top 3 wrestling moments of all time, maybe top 3, top 5 wrestling moments of all time. With Hogan, what Hogan did, which is
probably the greatest heel turn of all time.
It's why it's so up there on my list. I know it had the spin-offs, but again, like DX, edgy, controversial, shocking, but intriguing, but compelling, but that eye-grabbing. I need to watch WCW instead of Monday. I need to watch Nitro instead of Monday Night Raw. And again, like, without, and like with like again, WWE needed to fight it. Need to fight WCW. So again, that's why you can say the corporation and Austin versus Vince. So like, I feel like the NWO is just such a basis for all our points, right? For the most, I mean, my number 1, I think, is the ultimate foundation for everything. But NWO is just so big.
I'm not denying that it is.
I mean, the merch, the merch is so iconic. It just works out so well. I mean, like, for crying out loud, at WrestleMania during the Firefly Funhouse match this past year, at the Performance Center, right? The fact that Cena came out in NWO colors, but the fact that just the theme and the shirt came out got a pop. So that just tells a whole lot. And
just Cena in the NWO, just like I popped on my seat. Like I've said, that's maybe one of my favorite things I've ever seen in wrestling was that match, and that was part of it. So
yeah. So we're gonna go on, but we're ranting a little bit. But again, that's why I think NWO is on my list. It's too big. It's too iconic, and it's still going to go down as one of the best things of all time. And just, I guess, for our kayfabe fans, it's just a time for you just sit back, relax, and just remember the good times. Pete, let's go to number 2.
Yeah, well, we just talked about what I just said. I think is the greatest heel turn of all time. I'm going to talk about what I think is the second best heel turn of all time here. So I'm going with the Shield. The Shield is my number 2 for all time. And it's one of the few examples I can ever think of where WWE have just got it right, and they booked it to perfection in that initial run. And I mean, they got everything in that run right. Like they nailed the debut, came in like big names on the debut, who basically attacked Undertaker. Like the attire maybe a little bit off at the start, but that just worked. The members worked perfectly in sync. I thought they all complemented each other ridiculously well. You had like the technical master, you had your brawler in terms of Dean Ambrose, who was great on the mic, and then you had your big brute Uwa on the side.
Wow.
Basically, that powerhouse trio. Like their feuds were so good. The feuds with the Wyatts was obviously amazing. The feuds with Team Hell No, that was amazing. The feuds with Evolution, that was amazing. The face turn was perfectly timed. So when they were just becoming popular and everyone was starting to cheer them rather than boo them, they pulled the trigger there. They turned them face and everyone was so behind them. And that led them to the feud with Evolution, and they clean swept Evolution. That match where they got elimination 6-man tag and they clean swept Evolution.
It says a lot.
They put over the newer guys, the future stars, over the bigger stars. It's what I criticize WWE for not doing enough, is investing in your new guys and giving them that level of push. I know they are all main event players. Admittedly, one of them for a different company, but they are all
they are. They are.
And then that turn, and where can I even start? Like you had them at the height of their popularity, and I mean the height of it. They were so hot at that time, and I'm not just talking about their looks. The crowd was so behind them, and they turned it. They turned them at their peak of their popularity.
Yeah,
and that is something people don't do enough. They broke them up when people wanted to see more of them.
Oh yeah.
And that heel turn was perfection. I still remember the guy in the crowd just screaming, "No!"
That's what I was going to bring up. You took it away. Damn it.
And what happened after that? Let's just say that's a bit meh. But that initial run up to that ending there is the best end of a stable I've ever seen. Admittedly, they had their little bits of like reuniting and stuff. And to show how popular this stable got, Roman Reigns, the most hated guy in wrestling for like a year, 2 years, whatever.
Yeah.
The most hated, everyone booed him. As soon as you even slightly hinted at the Shield getting back together, if they did a triple powerbomb, if they're just in the ring together, a fist bump, the crowd went wild. That's how much the Shield was still over. Even though Roman was absolutely despised.
Oh yeah.
Any hint of the Shield and the crowd goes berserk. Just that opening theme as well, where it goes Sierra, Hotel, Indigo, Echo, Lima, Delta. As soon as that hit, the crowd, amazing pop. And I don't think we've seen things like that in wrestling.
No, and I can attest to the small pop again. I was at Survivor Series 2016 here in Toronto. When like who was on Team SmackDown? Ambrose. When Ambrose, Rollins, and Ambrose was feuding with AJ at the time, and then as soon as Ambrose said, "Forget you, Team SmackDown, I got my boys over here," and as soon as they did the triple power bomb to AJ on the Spanish table, it's always a Spanish table. I lost it. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm seeing a Shield power bomb in person. It was amazing. And,
exactly. And that didn't even make sense in terms of the storyline. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. But you still got a pop out of it because it's the Shield.
Again, the night after WrestleMania, being on Monday Night Raw at the Barclays Center, once the show went out, to see the Shield one more time, the fans were loving it. The fans didn't want. I know I didn't want to see Ambrose go. Obviously, he's gone into the bigger and better things, so good for him. Because what you do as a person to grow is way more important than what other people want or say. But being there in that moment, the Shield together for the last time was like hot. Damn right. It sucks that it really is over, and that Ambrose wants to move on, and again, like fans just wanted to keep seeing it. I know it wasn't like a strong Shield run at the end of it all because they were just coming out of that awkward transition from the sudden Ambrose heel turn after Roman's leukemia announcement, and then just kind of putting the pieces back together. It's like it was an awkward like reunion and try to move away from that because it was just so impactful. But again,
Ambrose wanted out as well, which
exactly, and that that last night was just really, for me personally to be there was just great, but. You got the vibe. You're like, damn it. You wish there was more, and you wish that you wish that like they had like another good run. And again, like you said, that Rollins heel turn, the guy screaming in the crowd, no, and like in a pitch silent arena in Indiana, and you're like, oh man, like the fans got like, I was shocked. I'm like, oh crap, like here we go,
Yeah.
and like fans are impatient. They're impatient. Okay, I want to see like a heel turn. I want to see something good, right? But with this is like, is it really gonna happen? Maybe not. And the fact that there you're like, oh crap, oh no. It's not in my top 5.
This is my point of like, you do things while it's the right time. You be that big shock, because no one expected the Shield to break up that night. No, and if you say you did, you're lying, because no one thought they were going to go over Evolution like that, absolutely demolish Evolution the night before, and then come out the next day after a huge win and break up.
I mean, I will say, like, as soon as Ambrose and Roman stepped out front, right, and then you had Seth with the chair. As soon as they walked up, I'm like, oh god,
that's
this is it.
Fine. You get that little second warning, but
yeah, you're like, get ready.
I mean, before the show, nobody.
Yeah, no, of course.
Nobody thought going into that Raw. It's kind of like, there isn't anyone that popular in wrestling at the moment, but it's the extent of I'm trying to even think, but it's almost like Hall, Nash, and Hogan suddenly getting like really popular, and then just like for some reason it's Hall who suddenly just turns as well. It suddenly just smacks him over the back. It's that level of, oh my god, these guys are so over, they're never going to split up, or at least not now. And then just pulling that trigger, it just doesn't happen. And also, everybody thought it was going to be Ambrose.
Yeah, oh yeah, that was the big one. They're expecting Ambrose. Oh yeah,
even Ambrose thought it was going to be Ambrose. So it's kind of
yeah, I mean, if anything, I think you gave me a good reason to put it as my honorable mention. It wasn't in my top 5, just because I think that the groups that I mentioned were just far more. I was going for impact.
I've still got 3 more in my honorable mentions, but
yeah, I mean, I'm going for impact in my list. But you're right, this group was, I think, definitely significant in this era of WWE. And again, like, I think I feel like in another, we're saying it now, but give it another, let's say 5 to 10 years, and I feel like we're still going to be saying, what if they did it again? And I mean, it's like, sometimes you just, I mean, who knows if Ambrose would ever go back or what? I don't think so, but
I don't know if Roman and Seth got away.
Exactly. I mean, those are honestly
weird things have happened.
They're fair questions, but I mean, was Hogan going to leave WWE and then go to WCW? Boom.
Like,
so
it is one of those factions I don't think we're ever going to see again, and it's a shame.
It's unfortunate.
But also, we've got such good memories of that faction, and
yeah. So just appreciate for what it is. I'm going to go to my number 1, and my number 1 is again, like, without any of these factions, heel, mainly heel, but somewhat face. You don't get it. You don't get them unless it was for this group. And I'm talking about the original four horsemen: Ric Flair, Olin, Arn Anderson, and Tully Blanchard. They are the definition of a heel stable. They're the definition of, let's get all the gold. Let's ride out in style, limousine riding, jet flying, wheeling, dealing, sons of guns. Without these people, you don't get Evolution. You don't get the NWO. You don't get the corporation, in my opinion, because they set the blueprint. It's kind of like the Money in the Bank cash. Without Edge's blueprint, you don't get what the cash-ins that we have. Without the 4 Horsemen, I don't think you get these kind of heel stables. Maybe you do down the road. I don't know, but they definitely set the tone. And again, it's so iconic that you even have like your own horsewomen: Sasha, Bayley, Charlotte, and Becky. Right? I mean, like, of course, a Flair has to be in there, but this is just like a dominant group, the original to hold the gold, the original to say that, we're the bosses around here, and like, move out of our way because here come the horsemen, right? The infamous 4 logo, and even to like, the 4, the putting your hand in a with 4, but it just feels like a name that holds up. Obviously, Triple H, you could say that with Evolution, the 2003 Evolution, that like it was like a reincarnation of the 4 Horsemen and their own spin to it. So that's why this is my number 1, because you need a foundation, you need a base for something, and I think that base is the 4 Horsemen.
Yeah, you're entirely right. Like, without the 4 Horsemen, I'm also going to throw another faction as an honorable mention, is the Freebirds as well. Mm-hmm. Without them, like, yeah, you don't have these levels of stables that you do today. But my only issue, the only reason they're not on this list, is because I don't know them well enough. I didn't see it. I haven't seen
that's fair.
Their matches. I didn't grow up with them. I haven't Like, I've gone back and pretty much watched the entirety of the Attitude Era. I've never gone back and really watched the eras where the Four Horsemen was so prominent. I've only seen a few matches.
Look, I'll say this. It wasn't. This is when I was debating back and forth. In fact, I almost put the Undisputed Era. I almost put the Undisputed in my top 5. But the reason why I put the Four Horsemen in there, because again, like I said, Impact, Foundation, and history. Those are that's my criteria. Even though I didn't grow up with them.
Highly valid points.
Even though like I didn't grow up with them, even though I didn't grow up with them, it's still a name where you like you just have to like. You came after me when I didn't put some stuff on my SummerSlam stuff in my SummerSlam top 5, right? So I mean, like this is like one where like you kind of had to.
Yeah, but those were stupid.
Okay.
But no, the Four Horsemen. Obviously, when I initially drafted my list, the Four Horsemen were on there, and then when I went back over it, I went, "But these stables mean so much more to me."
Yeah,
and how I do it, and like how I thought about it. When I looked back, I was like, well, actually. In terms of me enjoying wrestling, and when I enjoy wrestling, DX, NWO, Corporation, The Shield, and who I'm about to come on to, have had a far bigger impact on me enjoying wrestling than the Four Horsemen did, because I just did not grow up watching that wrestling.
Fair. It's a fair point. It's an absolute fair
deserve to be in the list of the greatest sales of all time. And if I was being completely impartial, they would probably be on this list, like 100%. But I'm not completely impartial. I'm me. And this is, in my opinion, they're an honourable mention because they contribute to this, and that's why they deserve that mention.
Yeah.
Same with the Freebirds.
Absolutely, and I feel like groups like the New Day benefited from having the Freebirds. Aside from just like face stables, but the Freebird rule, right, which helped define defines factions as well. So that it's definitely an honorable mention. What is your number one? Because I will say this. Your number one, to me, I am not for it. I have problems with this group. It's weird to say. I know they're big, but to me, it's like, I don't care about them at all. But you have your reasons.
I can 100% get that. And I'm not even basically on about today, but I'm going outside WWE again, and my number one is Bullet Club. And this, again, is personal to me because there's two things which got me... One thing got me back into wrestling, and that was Roman Reigns. And I've said that before. I've said that to people. Roman Reigns got me back into wrestling. The thing which made me get back into wrestling on such a high level was Bullet Club. And at the time, like I'd never watched New Japan Pro Wrestling before that. I had never watched basically indie promotions before then. I'd never even considered watching it outside like WWE. And then I basically heard about this stable of wrestlers created by non-Japanese wrestlers working in Japan, who were heels rebelling against the traditions of Japanese wrestling. And I was intrigued. So I basically went over. I was like, oh, I'm really intrigued by this. And this almost Attitude Era style faction in the modern day, which I didn't think could exist in this modern day.
That's true.
And it was taking the world by storm. And I was like, what the hell is going on with this? And it was almost getting to the point where you saw T-shirts everywhere. You saw all the different type of Bullet Club T-shirts everywhere. It was almost wrestling is at a point where I'm not afraid to wear this T-shirt in public again. And support it. That was almost the level that Bullet Club took it to, where I was too scared to be seen dead in a WWE T-shirt at that point. But like I was almost like, I got on like a bus near me and I'd see someone wearing a Bullet Club T-shirt. I'm like, what the hell? Someone's wearing a wrestling T-shirt? I don't see that in normal day life.
What is this? A T-shirt at a mall?
But in terms of the actual faction itself, I think it started off superbly on about like your key gesture. I know they stole it from the Click, but whatever. But Devitt and Anderson was a great start of that group. And I still think Prince Devitt is better than Finn Balor, and I will defend that.
Yeah, fair point.
But then when you got AJ Styles take over, and this is the best AJ Styles in my opinion. New Japan AJ Styles is unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Better than TNA AJ Styles. Better than WWE AJ Styles.
I know. I'm not going to argue that one.
He is at that level, and he basically legitimized him. He was the one who basically brought the top belt to that faction. And then Omega obviously did the same when he took over, and that was another beautiful heel turn when they all turned on Styles. That was brilliantly executed in there as well. And they won everything. It's a faction which literally went and they won everything as this rebel group who were heels, they become faces, and they kind of like exist outside that landscape of they're just this almost arsehole faction who could just get away with doing whatever the hell they liked in a company which was so by the rules at that point. It was just traditional wrestling. And to see that happen, and then to see that expansion go mainstream outside of New Japan, when you likes of
that's a big one.
Skull come in, the likes of Hangman Page came in, the likes of Cody obviously joining from indie promotions. It weren't even like these weren't big names in New Japan, but they were big names in Ring of Honor, for example. And to see that kind of expansion was great. And then to see the Elite come out of that was another build up from there.
Of course, yeah,
versus original Bullet Club. Fantastic to see.
You could
Bullet Club, and without that going on, you don't get AEW.
That's what I was just about to say. Yeah, exactly that.
That doesn't happen.
No,
it just doesn't. So that's almost why I just think their impact on the wrestling landscape as a whole over the last 4 or 5 years, a little bit longer. Like it was 2014, I think they started. But
it's been a while. It's been a while, and
Bullet Club today is not the Bullet Club of old. It's not the iconic one to me. So
no.
I think Jay White is great. I think Kenta is great. Obviously, Tama Tonga Tangaloa, fantastic, but they've been in it for a while. I love that kind of thing. It doesn't have the same feel of these rebels who aren't like your rebel gaijins in New Japan. It doesn't have that feel.
And that's why, see, this is why I don't even put Bullet Club in my honorable mentions. Because I think everything has a limit and everything has an expiry date. Now, as a WWE, as somebody who favors WWE more, you can argue that, stuff like New Day maybe would be in that conversation, and where I sound hypocritical. But the biggest reason why I'm just bugged by Bullet Club is the fact that I think it's run its course, and it's very similar to the NWO, and it's very similar to the NWO in the sense that there's so many little pods and factions. For example, those. I don't know any stables off the top of my head, and I feel like, and obviously people may come after me for that, but there are so many little pockets and expansions that you don't even know if it is Bullet Club, like it is, but it's not really. And again, like it's one of those things where like it's when it's. Sorry,
I get your point, but it isn't quite at that level. I think there's about 10, 11 members at the moment.
Right, and it's just it feels like there's so many little like I said, to me, it just feels like there's so many little pods, and it's 10 to 11. It's a huge group, but it's very similar to the NWO in a sense as like they, once all these little like expansions, all these DLCs came out of it, right? It's like it ran its course, and that's why
I'll get your point. I don't like Evil becoming the leader. I'm not a fan of that at all. It just seems out of nowhere. It doesn't make sense. But I kind of like when I think of Bullet Club, almost in a way, I see it as Prince Devitt, Carl Anderson starting it off.
Yeah.
In whenever that basically was. So there's Prince Devitt, Carl Anderson, Tama Tonga, and I think Bad Luck Fale were the first 4 members.
Mm-hmm.
And them starting it off, I think of it from there to the Elite leaving.
Right.
That's kind of like peak Bullet Club for me. And I know I've been a little bit hypocritical because I say like the endings matter to me on the others, and I'm kind of like giving this one a cut off. But that period of time from basically them starting it to Omega, the Bucks, Page, etc.
And again, like I said,
it hurt Bullet Club a lot to lose that level of membership.
Yeah, and again, like that. I mean, my point is like you don't want to continue it going, or you don't want to just like extend it because you may accidentally in the process ruin what was great, what was good. You don't want fans to forget that because you're investing in what's happening then, right? I mean, that's why I say like this is a group that I think has run its course a few years more than it should have, and that's why I think that but in ending the Bullet Club and just dissolving it, or finding a proper ending to it,
that should have ended it, that feud, and they should have started
exactly,
and they should have renamed
because
this new faction something else, because they lost like 6 members and they've suddenly brought in 5 new members out of nowhere. They brought in like Gedo, they brought in Jado, they brought in Jay White, they brought in whoever else. Taiji Ishimori came in just around then as well. So they brought in all these new members at that stage, and I think they should have then rebranded. I know Bullet Club still has the name value, which is why they didn't.
It's not the group. it's not the group that fans grew in love to buy their t-shirts and merch. It's not.
Yeah.
So why are you writing that and then saying like I'm not saying you. I'm just as a general sense.
I get
why are people just like, people saying, "Oh my God, this is still one of the best factions of all time"? To me, it's just not, because you don't have the original, for the most part, the original crew. Like almost all of them, are the original are gone.
Your two leaders now are Jay White and Evil, and it's kind of like Evil is a nothing to me. I hate that storyline. I hate that it happened.
A lot of people. I mean, one of my closest friends.
I love Jay White. I love Jay White as the leader of this group. But to me, this group is not Bullet Club.
That's it.
Call it the Switchblade Club for all I care. Call it the Blade Club. Like, I don't even.
Blades.
It's called the Blades.
Yeah. So that's why. I mean, I understand.
The only other mention I would say now is it's New Japan, and New Japan likes their big wrestling stables, and they like having it. So you've obviously got Chaos in there, who have been going on forever as basically a faction, and LIJ, who is another honorable mention for me, because I think LIJ were brilliant again until this most recent storyline. But LIJ was another honorable mention to me. And New Japan like having these big stables, so on the pre-shows they can put together 6-man tags for a reason. And that's why they exist. And that's unfortunately why Bullet Club now exists, and that's not why they used to exist. So that's the only reason. So yes, I'm being a hypocrite. I admit I'm being a hypocrite, but I'm cutting this off at basically when the Elite left.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what.
I'm going from Finn Balor leadership to Kenny Omega leadership.
Yeah, and that's why I like. I mean, that's why from that perspective, that's why I like it as your number one, because again, it is essentially this generation's NWO, a rebel group in a completely different part of the world that has managed to integrate its way here into North America, or excuse me, and the UK. Don't forget our British, and worked out. So that's our top 5. For both of us. Of course, if you guys have any objections, if you like what we see, agree, comment, all the jazz. Before we wrap, your thoughts. We obviously got to bring up, like the factions that haven't been.
Yeah, well, that was part of the question.
Any of us. And I mean, you obviously have to me, you have groups like, let's say, the League of Nations or the Spirit Squad. There's not you have some bad example, but. There's one I really want you to bring up because you brought it up to me. I've never heard of it in my life.
Well, I'll cover the other two quickly first.
Go.
The Core, who were just Supermarket's own brand Nexus, which was just terrible. And they lost to 2 minutes at WrestleMania, and that's all they built up to. And it was just such a bad spin-off from the Nexus. It just wasn't worth having. The other one I wanted to bring up was Team Bad, Team Bella, and Team PCB.
That was bad.
And that entire storyline, those 3 factions, initially Team PCB, remember, the Submission Sorority as well. Great marketing there. Don't Google that, kids. You don't want to see what comes up. But no, that entire storyline was bad. But Jose wants me to bring up a team that he's never heard of from TNA, which is Sports Entertainment Extreme.
I've never heard of it. What is this?
So this was a heel wrestling stable in TNA back in, I'm going to say, late 2002 to 2003.
Of course it's TNA. Okay, go on.
100% it's TNA. So the angle began, I'm just going to go very quickly through how this stable happened, because this, in my opinion, is one of the worst things in wrestling. And I used to watch TNA because it was on free TV for us back then.
Yeah, good old days.
It began with a guy called Mr. Wrestling 3. He was a masked guy. He was interfering in all the matches. And in late 2002, Jeff Jarrett won the belt off R-Truth, Ron Killings, to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship with the help of Mr. Wrestling 3, who then unmasked himself. If you were going to guess a horrible heel person who potentially unmasked themselves around that time, who do you reckon it might be?
Repeat the question. A horrible heel
person who's going to unmask himself as having been like a screw job, called Mr. Wrestling 3, very associated with TNA.
Oh my goodness. Chris Sabin.
It was Big Daddy Vince Russo.
Vince Russo.
So
I know
later
that
on,
guy.
Russo
That
gave,
guy's familiar.
like I said, Vince Russo gave Jeff Jarrett a choice to be with him or without him. Jeff Jarrett told him to basically F off. Russo got a bit pissed off about this and started attacking Jeff Jarrett on multiple times. And then he came out with one of my favorite, terrible, awful promos ever. And he comes out and he basically tries to pull an NWO. And he tries to basically set up this group as the NWO of TNA.
Oh, God.
And he basically starts going, the NWA doesn't give a shit about you people. It's the senior citizens and old men running in the company in the back, whose biggest concern is not wetting the bed tonight. It's like, I know what you fans want. You want blood. You want violence. You want vulgar language. You want nudity. And you want sex. So tonight is the birth of sports entertainment. Extreme. Spell it out, baby. SEX in wrestling. And then to make this even worse, he then gets the ring announcer woman, who's an attractive woman called Athena, brings her in the ring, starts saying, I know what these people want. TNA stands for tits and ass. And the world wants to see your breasts. And he starts degrading her in the ring. He pins her up into a corner, starts calling her and shouting her and calling her a whore. At which point, Ron and Don Harris come out, look like they were going to attack Vince Russo, at which point they don't. They then do a double team finisher on her instead. And this forms the basis of your new stable of Ron and Don Harris and Vince Russo. And then I believe BG James also got involved. So you get like a nice takeover storyline, like NWA style. Pete wrestlers start turning their back on TNA and instead joining Sex. Keeps getting referred to as
sex.
And then it kind of like fizzles out. It's only like 6 month thing or something. And
this lasted a fair amount. Okay, all right.
It's Jarrett and Russo and the big feud. And Jarrett then plays a video to Vince Russo. And this is one of the things I remember from TNA at that time. And it's a video of Vince Russo's sons. And they're saying that they love him, but Vince Russo's become too obsessed with his work and too obsessed with sex. And then they start saying, so Vince Russo comes on and they kind of show like a little clip of Vince Russo side by side. And the kid starts going, he's too obsessed with sex and he's a shitty father in general. So Vince Russo then basically says, he's like kind of crying, and he goes to Jeff Jarrett and goes, this is a low blow, getting that little shit on here. I'm going to go and beat the crap out of him later. So basically threatens to beat up his own son.
All right, so
following week on TNA, Vince Russo retires and Sex kind of drifts away. So to me, that is the worst stable in wrestling.
Just to summarize, Mr. Atkinson, if you don't mind, we have a takeover group. You have degrading and sexism. You have domestic violence, all for the glory of wrestling.
I will say a couple of good things did come out of this group.
And that is?
Basically, it formed Triple X, which was Elix Skipper, Loki, and Christopher Daniels, kind of came as like a feud against them. Okay. And it kind of secured AJ Styles' rise to the main event because he was kind of feuding against like SEX and Vince Russo during this. So it kind of like secured him. No one in SEX came out of this well, but a couple of people they were feuding with came out of this well. Like they had some fairly famous members. Like I think Raven was a member of it at one point.
Raven,
Rock and Roll Express were in it.
Wow,
David Flair was in it. Tony Schiavone was in it as a guest announcer for the group for one night.
Oh, Tony. I mean, look. I'll say that. Like, I mean, yeah, I know my wrestling history. Yeah, I've been a fan for a while, almost 20 years. I'm happy that I was never a TNA guy. I'm happy I've never heard of this. And I'm happy that it's just
if you ever want to just watch some terrible but very hilarious wrestling, go and watch TNA from the start. Like go back like 2002 TNA.
Oh yeah, no, I know. It wasn't even like Colbert part of it at one point.
I was gonna say, go and watch like the Johnsons and stuff like that, who were basically like two guys in penis costumes. So, that was TNA. So TNA at that time was just like a horrible main event scene with an unbelievable undercard of fantastic wrestlers. So like your low-key Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles.
Yeah, no, it has its moments for sure, but
like I think like a week after this, the main event was like AJ Styles versus Raven. Like that's a great match.
That I don't think we should list any more bad stables. I think that is the perfect way to cap this episode off because that is absurd. That is
best stable in wrestling.
Ridiculous. If you have any other comments, if you have any other suggestions of bad or good stables, agree with us, whatever, tweet at us, follow us, tweet at us, comment, and leave a comment below, all that jazz.
If you think there is a worse stable in wrestling than sex, please let me know because I want to find out more about them.
Yeah. We'll have a part 2 to this. Oh yeah, I think that's a great way to cap this off. So Pete, thanks for coming on. Definitely an entertaining episode. Definitely a lot of good, a good trip down memory lane. And as always, let's get to the closing. You made it to the end of the episode, and I'm happy I didn't look up what Pete said. That is odd, and Vince Russo can just go to hell. That's all I can say. My God, he's probably one of the worst wrestling figures in history, or not, if not the worst. But yeah, that's terrible. But what a way to end the show in that portion. Thanks again to Michael Keyes for that topic. Great suggestion for us, and like I said, we definitely had a good time with it. Next week, it's this channel's staple, this podcast staple. It is predictions. It's Clash of Champions that we look forward to next week. The podcast title once again up for grabs. And I got so many predictions. Oh my goodness. Sometimes it just feels like that's all we do. But that's okay because we have fun predicting and looking at what's going on in the current state of wrestling and WWE. No exception to it. So get ready for that next week. And the only thing that I can say is just that. Thank you so much for watching. Become a patron, help support the podcast, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us here on YouTube. I'm Jose Tabuada. We will see you guys next week. Have a great one. Bye.